August in Austin, air like a furnace. Adrian Cole, blue-eyed CEO of Luminarch AI, brakes on Maple Grove. A 7-year-old kneels on gravel and bottle caps, skin blistering. From the doorway, a man snaps, "Don't move." She grips a faded wristband. Build brave. Adrian lifts her, calls 911. If he steps in tonight, what truth will he expose, and what will it cost? Heat clung to Austin even near midnight. Cicadas scraped the air. Sodium lights washed Maple Grove in a chalky glare. Adrian Cole eased his electric sedan to a crawl, blue eyes catching motion at the edge of light. A child knelt at the end of a narrow driveway, small knees pressed into a scatter of aquarium gravel and bottle caps. Her bare feet flattened on concrete that still radiated the day. She braced her palms, breathing in quick, hot bursts. On her wrist, a faded green band read, "Build Brave." From the shadowed doorway, a man's voice cracked across the heat. "Do not move till I say so." The snap in it had practice. The girl did not lift her head. Adrian braked. He took in the posture, the stones, the shine on the tender skin, the trained stillness. This was pain. He put the car in park and stepped into the furnace air. His jacket came off in one motion. Up close, her elbows trembled, and a bottle cap had left a rounded imprint in one knee. "Hey," he said, low, so it would not sound like a command. "My name is Adrian. Are you hurt?" Her lips barely moved. "I just want a home without shouting." The sentence weighed more than the heat. Adrian lowered to her level, suit pants collecting dust, jacket ready in his hands. He glanced toward the doorway. The silhouette shifted, but did not step forward. "I am going to lift you off these stones," he said. "You are not in trouble." Her fingers tightened on the band. "Build Brave" flashed and faded with her pulse. He slid the jacket under her like a shield, then got one arm beneath her knees, the other at her shoulders. She was light in the way that says more than numbers. When cloth met skin, she hissed. "Sorry," he murmured. "Almost there. Breathe with me. In, out." From the doorway, the man barked again. "Put her down. That is discipline." Adrian turned just enough to be seen, jaw set, lenses catching streetlight. "Sir," he said, "what I am seeing is harm. I am calling for help." He carried her to the shade beside his car and set her on the threshold. He pulled his phone, pressed emergency, gave the address, the condition, the age as best he could guess. Heat exposure. Abrasions. Possible dehydration. Conscious and responsive. "Help is on the way," the dispatcher said. "What is your name?" he asked. "Ivy." "Ivy," he said. "That is a strong name. You do not have to be brave alone." She looked up for the first time. The eyes were wide, too old. The corner of her mouth trembled but held. She nodded once. From the house came a figure. Broad shoulders, a white tank damp with sweat. The man hovered at the edge of the light, measuring. Adrian angled his body, a quiet shield between Ivy and the doorway. The night pressed in, full of the hot hiss of cicadas. He wet a corner of the jacket with a cold bottle from his console and dabbed at grit on her knee. The skin there was puffy, glossy. A ring of bottle caps glittered where she had been. "Why the band?" he asked softly. "It was my dad's," she said. "He said to build brave. He died." The band was too big for her, stretched, the letters worn to a ghost. Adrian pictured a hand pressing it into a small palm with a promise attached. He thought about all the code he had written to make machines notice what people miss. Then he looked at the driveway no one should kneel on. Sirens began as a far thread and grew. "You are safe with me," Adrian said. He laid the jacket over her shins. "We are going to fix what we can, starting now." The silhouette in the doorway shifted. The sirens drew close, washing the street in blue. The heat did not break, but something in the night did. Adrian held his ground and did not look away. The patrol car lights flickered across the stucco houses, bouncing off Adrian's glasses as he handed the phone to the responding officer. "She's dehydrated," he said evenly, though the pulse in his neck told another story. The officer nodded. "Paramedics are on their way." Kurt Maddox, thick-armed, sunburned, a sheen of anger still on him, stepped out from the porch. "You don't get to tell me how to raise my kid," he spat. "She's 7. You have to teach him respect." Adrian didn't flinch. Respect isn't fear. She was on gravel at 100 degrees. That's not teaching, it's torture. The officer intervened. "Sir, step aside." Kurt sneered. "Discipline. Ever heard of it? Maybe that's why your kind of people raise soft kids." Adrian's jaw tightened. "If softness means decency, I'll take that." The medics arrived, kneeling beside Ivy, scanning her vitals. The little girl tried to sit up, eyes darting between them. "Am I in trouble?" Adrian crouched beside her. "No, Ivy. You're safe tonight." She hesitated, as if she'd never heard that word used about herself. Safe. Then a woman arrived, short black hair pinned back, CPS badge glinting under the streetlight. "Talia and Gwen, Child Protective Services," she said briskly. "Who found her?" "I did," Adrian replied. "She was kneeling here. He called it discipline." Talia looked at Ivy's red knees, her trembling hands, the faded green band. "We're documenting this," she said, snapping photos. "Sir," she turned to Kurt, "you'll need to stay back." "She's my wife's kid," Kurt grumbled. "I'm trying to make her listen." "By burning her skin?" Talia shot back. "Step inside, please." Kurt glared but obeyed, muttering. Talia knelt near Adrian. "You did the right thing calling us, but with shelters full tonight, we're limited." Adrian didn't look away from Ivy. "She's not going back there. It's not that simple." "I'm not asking for simple." His tone softened. "Just safe." Talia studied him. Tailored suit, steady voice, not the type she usually saw on site. "We can approve a temporary overnight placement under emergency procedure, but it'll need sign-off." "Do it," he said without hesitation. Talia scribbled notes. "Mr. Cole, right? Luminark AI?" He nodded. "That's right." She blinked, recognition flickering. "You're the one launching that safety platform next week?" "Yeah. Let's start by proving it works for humans." Minutes later, Ivy sat on the ambulance bumper, cooling gel on her knees, sipping water through trembling lips. She clutched the jacket he'd wrapped around her like a life raft. "You got somewhere you can take her?" Talia asked. "My place," he said. "She'll have a room. I'll have my chief of staff arrange overnight care." Talia studied him again, weighing instinct against protocol. "You're sure?" "I'm sure." He looked down at Ivy. "What do you think, Ivy? Want to come with me just for tonight?" Her voice was a whisper. "You won't shout?" "Not even once," Adrian said. "We fix things here, remember?" She nodded, clutching her green wristband tighter. As the officers took Kurt's statement, Talia signed the temporary release. "I'll check on her in the morning. And Mr. Cole, keep receipts for everything. The paperwork will be a nightmare." He smiled faintly. "I'm familiar with systems that don't work." The drive downtown was quiet. Cicadas screamed outside the window, the hum of the EV steady inside. Ivy leaned against the seat, fighting sleep. Adrian glanced at her reflection in the window, the small wristband glowing faintly under the console light. "What does it mean?" he asked gently. She murmured, "My dad gave it to me, before he got sick. He said, 'Build brave, Ivy. Always build brave.'" Her eyelids fluttered. Adrian looked back to the road. The air outside shimmered with heat, but inside the car a fragile calm settled. He adjusted the AC slightly lower, just enough to keep her cool, then whispered, more to himself than to her, "Then that's exactly what we'll do." The elevator hummed softly as Adrian carried Ivy up to the 32nd floor. The city glowed beneath them, Austin's skyline shivering under the heat haze, the streets below still pulsing with late-night traffic. When the elevator doors opened, cool air spilled into the minimalist penthouse. White walls, clean lines, a faint scent of cedar and steel. Adrian's home was designed for clarity and control. Everything in its place, nothing unexpected. Until now. Amara Patel, his chief of staff, was already there. She had dark curls pulled into a bun and an expression that could quiet a boardroom. Her eyes widened when she saw the small girl in Adrian's arms. "Sir?" she asked carefully. "Who's—" "This is Ivy," he said. "She's staying tonight. Emergency CPS placement." Amara blinked. "From the street?" "From a driveway," Adrian corrected, setting Ivy gently on the couch. "It was over 100 degrees. Her stepfather calls it discipline." Amara inhaled sharply. "Oh, God." "I called 911. CPS approved the overnight stay." She nodded, already switching modes. "All right, I'll get the guest room ready and call Dr. Patel, no relation, to check her burns." Ivy looked around with quiet awe. The glass walls reflected the city lights, and the furniture looked like something from another world. Too clean, too calm. "Is this a hotel?" she asked softly. "No," Adrian said with a faint smile. "It's home." She hesitated. "It's very shiny." He chuckled. "Yeah, it can be. But shiny isn't always safe, is it?" Her head tilted, as if she didn't quite understand. When the on-call nurse arrived, Ivy sat at the kitchen island, small legs swinging as Amara handed her a cool glass of water. The nurse cleaned and bandaged her knees while Adrian brewed tea he'd never brewed before. Ivy winced as the antiseptic stung her skin. "If I drop this cup, will you yell?" Adrian set the teapot down, watching her. "No, but why would you think that?" Her shoulders lifted, barely a shrug. "Mom says accidents waste money. Kurt says broken things teach lessons." Amara's hands froze on the counter. Adrian's eyes darkened. "Here," he said quietly, sliding a chipped green mug toward her. "This one's been through worse. If it breaks, we fix it. That's what we do here." For the first time that night, Ivy smiled. Small, uncertain, but real. She lifted the mug with both hands and took a careful sip. Later, when the nurse left and Amara dimmed the lights, Adrian guided Ivy down the hall. The guest room smelled faintly of lavender and fresh linen. A soft blanket. A stuffed bear from the staging closet. Props for guests who never stayed long. Ivy stood at the doorway, eyes tracing the city lights beyond the window. "It's so high," she whispered, "like a sky you can touch." Adrian crouched beside her. "You can sleep here tonight, Ivy. No shouting, no gravel." She looked at him, still unsure. "Do you have kids?" He paused. "No, not yet." Her next question came like a whisper that cut deeper. "Then why help me?" He looked down at the Build Brave band around her wrist. The letters cracked, the green faded. "Because someone once helped me," he said softly. "And I didn't forget." She nodded, fingers tightening around the band as she climbed into bed. When her breathing evened, Adrian stood in the doorway longer than necessary. The city hummed below. His phone buzzed. 3 missed calls, 1 from his PR director, 2 from the CFO. Headlines already lighting up the feeds. AI CEO rescues child in heatwave incident. Amara appeared at his shoulder. "They'll want a statement by morning." Adrian stared at the glow of the skyline. "Tell them to wait." "About what?" "About everything. Tonight isn't about press." He glanced back at the sleeping girl. "It's about what intelligence looks like when it remembers to be human." Amara's gaze softened. "You've always believed that, Adrian. Maybe now people will listen." He didn't answer. He just nodded once, set his watch on the counter, and stayed by the door until the hum of the city blended with the sound of a child finally sleeping. Morning light seeped through the panoramic glass, softened by the haze of heat still hanging over the city. Adrian stood at the window of his penthouse, navy tie half fastened, watching the traffic crawl down Congress Avenue. Behind him, the faint sound of cartoon voices flickered from the living room screen. Ivy had found the remote before breakfast. Amara entered, tablet in hand, expression unreadable. "You're trending," she said. "I guessed," Adrian murmured without turning. "Every outlet's running it. Tech CEO becomes foster hero." The stock spiked, but PR is panicking. They think this looks impulsive. He buttoned his cuff, the prestigious watch catching the sunlight. It wasn't impulsive, it was human. They're worried about optics. You have the Luminark AI safety launch tomorrow. Investors want to know if you're stable. He turned finally, piercing blue eyes sharp behind his glasses. "If what we call intelligence can't recognize a child in danger, what are we building?" Amara held his gaze for a beat. "So, that's the line you want me to give them?" "It's not a line, it's the truth." The tablet buzzed again, another alert. She sighed. "CFO's waiting in the boardroom. Press statement draft 2. Before they left, Adrian peeked into the living room. Ivy sat cross-legged on the couch, hair tangled, one bandaged knee propped up. She looked small against the expanse of leather and glass. The green band on her wrist gleamed faintly as she turned toward him. "Are you leaving?" "Just for a few hours." Her lips pressed together. "Will I be here alone?" "Amara will stay, and Dr. Patel's coming back to check your knees." Ivy hesitated, then asked quietly, "What if he comes here?" "He won't," Adrian said, crouching to meet her eyes. "You're safe now." "But what if?" she pressed. He considered her, then reached into his briefcase and took out a small titanium pen, smooth and cool in his hand. He placed it on the table beside her. "If you ever get scared, write something down. Anything. Words make walls stronger." She touched the pen carefully, as if it might break. "It's heavy." He smiled faintly. "That's how you know it matters." At Luminark headquarters, the temperature inside was crisp, glass walls gleaming like mirrors. The boardroom was full. CFO, legal, PR, and 3 investors on video screens. The tension was thicker than the air outside. CFO Nathan Clark leaned forward. "Adrian, we respect what you did, but we're days from launching an AI safety platform that's supposed to prevent crises. Now the public thinks you caused one." "I prevented harm," Adrian said simply. "That's the foundation of our mission." Nathan frowned. "Our mission is scalable systems, not personal crusades." "Systems reflect the people who build them," Adrian countered. "If we can't see a human in pain and act, then all we're scaling is indifference." The room went silent. PR Director Melina Ortiz cleared her throat. "We can reframe this. Position it as part of your leadership ethos. AI with empathy, human oversight, all that. But we need to own the narrative fast." Adrian nodded slowly. "Center the story on child safety, not me. No grand hero arc, just a question. What do we owe each other when technology sees everything but compassion?" Amara, watching from the far end, smiled faintly. She'd seen this tone in him before, the calm that came right before every major shift in the company's history. After the meeting, she followed him out to the balcony. Heat shimmered off the rooftops, turning glass towers into liquid light. "You realize," she said, "you just redirected a billion-dollar launch toward a moral conversation." Adrian rested his hands on the rail. "Good. Maybe it's time we build something that saves people before it saves profit." Down below, the city churned with noise and motion. But here, high above, he could almost hear the quiet breath of the child asleep in his guest room that morning, her fingers curled around a chipped green mug. When Amara spoke again, her voice softened. "What are you going to do about her?" "Adrian?" He didn't answer right away. His gaze lingered on the skyline, the heat shimmer, the long horizon that looked almost alive. "Whatever it takes," he said finally. Detective Marco Ruiz stood in the muted light of the clinic hallway, arms crossed as he studied the photos laid out on the table. Bruises at different healing stages, faint marks around Ivy's wrists, traces of malnutrition. He'd seen worse, but something about this case felt orchestrated. Adrian arrived moments later, dressed down in a slate shirt and rolled sleeves. The man looked like he hadn't slept. though his tone was steady. "What did you find?" Ruiz glanced up. "Evidence of long-term harm, consistent with coercive control. The kid's tougher than she looks, but those bruises go back months." Adrian's jaw tightened. "And her mother?" "Serena Maddox. No priors. Seems compliant to a fault." Ruiz flipped a file open. "She reported nothing. That's not neglect. That's fear." Amara entered behind Adrian, holding her tablet. "Detective, we found something odd in the life insurance trust Ivy's father left behind. It's supposed to be in Serena's name, but—" She swiped, pulling up a spreadsheet of transactions. "Over the last year, regular maintenance fees have been withdrawn, large sums, signed by Serena, but transferred to Maddox Shell Holdings." Ruiz frowned. "Shell Holdings?" "Registered to Kurt Maddox," Amara said. "He's been draining the trust, likely keeping Serena dependent." Adrian exhaled slowly. "So, the abuse wasn't about power alone. It was control of money." Ruiz nodded. "Financial abuse, wrapped in domestic. Classic setup. He isolates the kid, controls the mother, buries the paper trail." Adrian leaned against the table, eyes narrowing. "Can we prove it?" "Not yet, but we will," Ruiz said. "I'll need access to your company's data verification team, someone who can trace hidden accounts." "You'll have it," Adrian said. Amara crossed her arms. "And what happens to Ivy in the meantime?" Ruiz shrugged. "CPS has her under temporary placement with you, pending hearing. But if Kurt pushes back legally—" "He won't get the chance," Adrian cut in. "I'll handle the lawyers." Ruiz smirked faintly. "You're used to boardrooms, Mr. Cole. Courtrooms are different animals." "I've stood before worse," Adrian replied. Later that afternoon, Amara joined Adrian in his office at Luminark. The glass walls dimmed automatically against the heat outside, tinting the skyline amber. "Ivy's been quiet," Amara said gently. "She drew a house this morning. No windows, just walls." Adrian rubbed his temples. "What does that tell you?" "That she doesn't see a way out yet," Amara said softly. "But she's starting to test safety. She asked if the fridge belonged to her, or if she had to ask first." He paused. "And what did you tell her?" "That she can have a glass of milk any time she's thirsty." Adrian smiled faintly. "That's more progress than my first year running this place." Amara smiled too, then grew serious. "You know, if this goes public, really public, you'll be under more fire than you think. They'll say you overstepped, used your power for optics." "Let them," Adrian said quietly. "The truth doesn't need marketing." Outside, the sun blistered the city. Air shimmered like water. Across town, Ruiz's unmarked sedan rolled past the Maddox home. The blinds were drawn, but a faint outline moved behind them. Serena stood at the sink, rocking the baby, her eyes hollow. The thermostat on the wall blinked 82 degrees. "To save money," Kurt had told her, but the savings never reached her hands. Ruiz parked a block away and jotted notes. A neighbor, watering her plants, called out quietly, "You that detective?" Ruiz looked up. "Ma'am?" She lowered her voice. "You might want to check his garage cameras. He's out there most nights. You can hear it." "Hear what?" "The yelling," she said, "and sometimes a thud, like something falling. Poor girl never even cried loud." Ruiz closed his notebook. "Thank you, ma'am. That helps." As he walked back to the kitchen, the asphalt shimmered so hard it looked like fire. He thought of the gravel, the bottle caps, the small figure kneeling in heat no one should endure. That night, back at the penthouse, Ivy sat beside Adrian at the kitchen counter. She was drawing again, this time a little robot with wings. "What's that?" he asked. "It fixes broken things," she said simply. "Even people, if they're small enough." He smiled faintly. "Maybe you should work for Luminark." She looked up at him, dead serious. "Only if you promise not to shout." He felt something in his chest loosen, the first laugh he'd had in days. "Deal." Outside, the heat rose off the city in invisible waves, But inside, something fragile and new began to take root. The CPS van pulled up to the curb on Maple Grove the next morning, its tires crunching against the dry asphalt. The sun was already climbing, pressing heat through the tinted glass. Adrian stood beside Detective Ruiz and Talia and Gwen as they approached the small brick house. A plastic tricycle lay overturned near the porch. The yard was quiet, too quiet for a house that should have held a family. Inside, Serena Maddox rocked a baby on her hip, eyes downcast. She was in her early 30s, thin, with the tired fragility of someone who'd stopped expecting kindness. "Mrs. Maddox," Talia said gently. "We're here for a supervised visit." Serena nodded without meeting her eyes. "He said you'd come." Her voice was a whisper. The thermostat on the wall blinked 82°F Celsius. Ruiz noted it automatically. "Always this warm?" "Kurt says it saves money," Serena replied, still rocking. "The bills are high." Adrian scanned the living room. Everything was spotless but airless, curtains drawn, windows sealed, a place that looked more like a display than a home. Talia turned toward her clipboard. "You understand Ivy's staying with temporary guardianship until the hearing?" Serena's hands stilled. "He said it's just a misunderstanding, that she needs to learn not to lie." Adrian's voice softened. "Serena, no one lied. Your daughter was hurt." Her eyes flicked to his for half a second, then darted away. "You don't know him. He gets angry, but he's trying." Ruiz stepped forward. "Where is he now?" "Work," she said quickly. "He won't be back until late." A faint whimper from the baby broke the silence. Serena rocked faster, almost as if the motion could erase the tension. From outside, but a neighbor's voice called softly, "You folks from the city?" Ruiz turned. A woman in a sun hat stood at the fence, watering wilted hydrangeas. She glanced nervously toward the house. "I've got something you should see," she whispered. Ruiz followed her to the porch next door. She held up her phone, replaying doorbell camera footage. Kurt's shadowed figure pacing the driveway, shouting, while a smaller one knelt on the concrete. "He did that more than once," the woman murmured. "Never let her inside till he finished yelling." "May I get a copy?" Ruiz asked. She nodded. "Take it. Just don't tell him I gave it." Back inside, Talia checked on Serena again. "Would you be willing to talk with our counselor later this week? It could help." "I can't," Serena interrupted, clutching the baby tighter. "If he finds out—" Adrian took a careful step closer. "He's not here now, and he won't control you forever." Her eyes filled, but she blinked fast, refusing the tears. "You don't understand. He says he'll take the baby if I don't listen." Ruiz and Talia exchanged a glance. The pattern was textbook: fear, dependency, silence. Adrian crouched, lowering his tone. "Serena, your daughter is healing. She's drawing again, sleeping through the night. You can still be part of that if you want to." Her breathing hitched. "She's okay?" "She's safe," he said softly. A knock at the door made her flinch. It was one of Ruiz's officers with a small evidence box. "Detective, doorbell. Cam and cloud backup retrieved. Warrants in process." Ruiz nodded. "Bag it and catalog the timestamp." Adrian looked back toward Serena. "You could help us protect her. You don't have to hide anymore." She swallowed hard, whispering, "I used to sing to her when he left for work. She'd hum in her sleep. Then one night he caught me and said, 'Quiet makes good girls.' I stopped singing." Adrian's voice trembled just slightly. "You can start again." Talia rested a hand on Serena's shoulder. "We'll set up a safe contact plan. You won't have to face him alone." As they left, Ruiz glanced back once more. The baby's small hand clutched Serena's blouse, her knuckles white. The air felt heavy, trapped. Outside, the heat shimmered off the driveway where the gravel still lay like small wounds. Ruiz snapped a photo, then crouched to brush one of the stones aside with his pen. Beneath it, the concrete bore faint stains of blood baked into its surface. He straightened. We've got enough to open a financial and domestic abuse case. The doorbell footage seals it. Adrian exhaled slowly, the sight of the stones tightening his chest. No child should ever have to kneel here again. As they drove away, Serena stood at the window, baby on her hip, staring after them. For the first time in years, she didn't draw the curtains. At the CPS office the next afternoon, fluorescent lights hummed softly over stacks of colored pencils and child drawings tacked to the walls. Rainbows, stick figures, houses with big yellow suns. Ivy sat at the small art table, her knees bandaged, her face intent as she drew slow circles of color. Adrian sat nearby, suit jacket off, sleeves rolled to the elbow. He'd been in boardrooms with senators and scientists, but here, watching a 7-year-old hold a crayon like it weighed the world, felt heavier than any negotiation. Talia and Gwen entered quietly, setting down 2 juice boxes. "You've got a visitor, Ivy," she said gently. "Detective Ruiz." Ruiz crouched beside her, careful not to tower over the small figure. "Hey, champ," he said softly. "You remember me?" Ivy nodded, not looking up. "You took pictures of the gravel." "That's right. I wanted to make sure no one ever makes you kneel there again." She changed colors, pressing hard on the paper now. The crayon snapped in half. She stared at it, frozen. Adrian reached over and picked up the broken piece. "You know what happens when something breaks here?" he asked. Her eyes lifted, wary. He joined the halves together gently, end to end. "We fix it." Her lip quivered, then steadied. She took the crayon back. When she finally pushed the paper across the table, Talia leaned closer. It wasn't a random drawing. There was a doorway, bright and glowing yellow. In front of it, small dotted stones, a shadow looming behind. And in one corner, a small green band around a stick figure's wrist. Talia exhaled. "Sometimes their pictures carry what words can't," she murmured. Adrian nodded, voice low. "I see it." He turned to Ivy. "That doorway, what's inside it?" She looked at the drawing, then whispered, "Home." Ruiz shifted uncomfortably. "You're brave, Ivy. You know that?" She shrugged. "If I move, I get in more trouble." Adrian leaned forward, eyes gentle. "Not with me. You get to move, breathe, talk. You get to be a kid again." Her fingers traced the green band on her wrist. "Kurt said brave means quiet. Brave means honest," Adrian said, "and you've already done the hardest part." The room was quiet for a moment. Just the hum of the lights, the faint whir of an AC struggling against the Texas heat. Ruiz stood, rubbing his chin. "We're running down the financial side. It looks like your dad left enough in that trust to keep you and your mom safe for years. Maddox drained most of it." Ivy's head tilted. "He took my dad's money?" "Yes," Ruiz said carefully. "But we're getting it back." Her small shoulders lifted slightly, a mix of confusion and relief. Talia gathered the drawings. "I'll file these in her case record," she said quietly. Then, to Adrian, "She's calmer when you're here. It's unusual." Adrian smiled faintly. "Maybe she recognizes code when she sees it. I fix systems for a living. Broken ones bother me." "Then you picked the right fight," Ruiz said, slipping the drawings into a folder. "But it's not over. He's going to push back." Adrian straightened. "Then let him. He'll learn what real accountability feels like." As Ruiz left, Ivy tugged at Adrian's sleeve. "Do I have to go back?" He crouched beside her again. "We'll make sure you go somewhere safe, Ivy. That's a promise." She hesitated. "Will you be there?" His throat tightened before he could answer. "If they let me, yes. But even if I'm not right beside you, I'm not gone. Understand?" She nodded slowly, then picked up another crayon. Green this time. She drew 2 small figures standing side by side under a big sun, both wearing wristbands. Adrian watched her draw, something softening in his chest. When Talia returned, she handed Ivy a new sketchbook. "For your next story," she said. Ivy smiled, shy, but real. Can I draw robots? Robots, suns, whatever you want, Adrian said. As they left the office, the late afternoon heat hit them like a wall. Cicadas screamed from the trees. Adrian looked down at the sketchbook in her hands and thought, for the first time in years, that maybe the world could be rewritten, one brave line at a time. Evening descended over Austin in layers of amber and blue, the kind of heat that refused to die even after the sun was gone. From the window of his high-rise office, Adrian watched the skyline flicker while Amara stood beside him, holding a tablet. "I got a call from Ruiz," she said. "He thinks they've got enough for a sting operation." Adrian turned from the glass. "How?" Amara swiped to a folder on her screen. "You're not going to like it. He needs someone Kurt won't suspect, a civilian, not police, someone to make contact under false pretenses." He folded his arms. "And you volunteered." "I'm your chief of staff," she said simply. "He won't recognize me. I can pass as a wellness vendor, someone pitching stress management training for his company." Adrian's jaw tightened. "That's too risky." "So is letting him keep getting away with it," she countered. "You trust Ruiz. I trust you. Let me do this." Adrian studied her for a long moment. Amara's calm had always been his anchor, precise, steady, unshakable. Tonight, that same calm burned with quiet fire. "Fine," he said at last. "But you wear a mic, and Ruiz stays close." She nodded. "Already arranged." The next afternoon, Amara parked in front of Maddox Shell Holdings, a squat, metal-sided warehouse on the city's industrial edge. The sign out front leaned slightly. The paint faded. She adjusted the microphone hidden in her blouse collar and carried a messenger bag filled with mock training brochures. Kurt Maddox met her at the door, thick neck and mean smile in place. "You're from, what was it, Mindwell Solutions?" "That's right," Amara said smoothly. "We specialize in behavioral training for staff retention. I heard you've had some turnover issues." Kurt laughed harshly. "You could say that. People these days can't handle real correction." He opened the door wider. "Come on in." Inside, the air was heavy with oil and heat. Fans rattled against the walls. She set her bag on a workbench, her small talk rehearsed. "So, tell me," she said lightly, "how do you manage discipline here?" Kurt leaned back, smirking. "I train people to be quiet and useful, same way I handle kids." Amara smiled, careful not to flinch. "That's efficient." He chuckled, lowering his voice. "You know, discipline's an investment. Same goes for guardianship." "Guardianship?" He poured himself a cup of stale coffee. "You'd be surprised what papers you can buy if you know the right people. Insurance trusts, custodial switches, it's all numbers." He tapped his temple. "You make the right kid look like a problem and suddenly you've got access to their future." Amara forced her breathing steady. "That sounds complicated." "Profitable," he corrected, "and you didn't hear it from me." Her watch vibrated once. Ruiz's signal. "Keep him talking." She tilted her head. "You must be very confident to say that out loud." He grinned. "Lady, I've been doing this long enough to know no one's listening." Outside, Ruiz sat in an unmarked car with his partner, monitoring the feed. The audio crackled with Kurt's voice. "Training kids to be quiet. Bought guardianship." "Got him," Ruiz muttered, hitting record. "That's the confession." Back inside, Amara stood, gathering her papers. "Thank you, Mr. Maddox. I think we'll pass on partnering, but you've given me a lot to think about." Kurt frowned. "You don't get to walk out mid-pitch." She met his eyes, calm and sharp. "Actually, I do." As she turned, Ruiz and two officers entered through the side door. "Kurt Maddox?" Ruiz's voice cut like glass. "Detective Ruiz, APD. You're under investigation for child endangerment and financial fraud." Kurt's expression flickered from confusion to fury. "You tricked me!" Ruiz raised a hand. "No, you recorded yourself." Amara exhaled quietly, stepping aside as the officers cuffed him. When she emerged into the sunlight, She saw Adrian waiting across the street beside his car. He crossed over, eyes scanning her face. "You okay?" She nodded. "He's in custody. Ruiz has everything." Adrian's voice dropped, relief heavy in it. "You shouldn't have had to do that." "Neither should she," Amara said softly. "But at least now, she doesn't have to kneel anymore." That night, Ruiz played the smart speaker recordings for Adrian in his office. Kurt's voice captured by the device after it accidentally triggered during one of his rants. The threats, the orders to stay still, the sound of gravel shifting under small feet. It was undeniable. Adrian sat in silence for a long moment. "Every system that claims to make life easier," he said finally, "should be required to record the truth when it hurts most." Ruiz nodded. "And now it has." Outside, lightning flickered on the horizon, far off but growing closer. The storm rolled in slowly that night, thick clouds pressing down on the Austin skyline like a heavy curtain. In Adrian's office, the glow from the monitors flickered across his face as he scrolled through an internal Luminark report. He didn't notice Amara enter until she placed a steaming cup of coffee beside him. "You're not going to like this," she said quietly. He looked up, removing his glasses. "What now?" "Security flagged a breach on the 21st floor." She hesitated. "Someone tried to access your private lounge." Adrian's expression sharpened. "Accessed or tried?" "Almost succeeded," she said, pulling up the footage on her tablet. A grainy image showed a man slipping into the hallway. Maintenance uniform, cap pulled low. Badge belonged to a contractor cleared for HVAC repairs. Except, she zoomed in, he's the same runner Ruiz mentioned, a Maddox associate. Adrian leaned back slowly. He planted something. Facilities AI flagged an anomaly. The moment he left, the sensors picked up irregular objects on the lounge counter. Security sealed the room. Adrian stood, buttoning his suit jacket. "Let's see it." Minutes later, they entered the sleek lounge, steel, glass, and quiet elegance. The air smelled faintly of citrus and ozone from the air purifiers. On the marble counter, 2 orange prescription bottles sat side by side, labels facing outward. Adrian read the names. Lorazepam, Tramadol. He exhaled. "They're staging a narrative." Amara nodded grimly. "He's trying to paint you as unstable. CEO under stress, questionable judgment. The perfect way to undermine custody." Adrian's gaze hardened. "He underestimated my AI." He turned toward the wall display. "Run audit, security footage, badge log crossmatch, timestamp overlay, anomaly correlation." Within seconds, the screen filled with a playback. Time-stamped footage from corridor cams, biometric scans, and door locks synced to the same moment. The AI reconstructed the runner's movements down to each misplaced step. Adrian's voice was calm but cold. "Send the entire package to Detective Ruiz." Amara pressed send. "Already done." Outside, lightning flashed over the city, a brief white cut across the skyline. Hours later, Ruiz called. "We picked him up trying to ditch his uniform near the river, found text messages on his phone, direct from Kurt's burner." "What do they say?" Adrian asked. Ruiz read from the log. "Plant the bottles. He'll panic. They'll never trust him with that kid again." Adrian exhaled slowly. "That's tampering. And conspiracy." "Exactly. We're stacking the charges. Maddox won't see daylight till trial." Amara closed her eyes briefly, relief trembling beneath the surface. "What about Serena?" "She's cooperating," Ruiz said. "She started therapy and agreed to testify about the trust withdrawals. She's finally talking." After the call, Adrian sank into his chair, the storm outside now a steady percussion of rain against glass. Amara stood by the window, arms crossed. "You know this could still get messy," she said. "Courts don't like CEOs meddling in custody." Adrian's eyes softened. "I'm not meddling. I'm standing where no one else would." She gave a faint smile. "And that's why people follow you." At that moment, soft footsteps echoed from the hallway. Ivy appeared, wrapped in a blanket, her hair mussed from sleep. She rubbed her eyes. "It's loud," she murmured. Adrian knelt beside her. "Just thunder. It can't hurt you." She looked toward the window, eyes wide at the flash. "It sounds like shouting." He hesitated, then reached for the titanium pen on his desk and pressed it into her hand. "Here, when it's too loud, hold this." She clutched it tight. "What does it do?" "It helps you remember you're safe." She traced the metal with her thumb. "You promise?" "I promise," Adrian said quietly. "No one shouts here." She nodded and rested her head on his shoulder, the pen still in her hand. Amara watched from the doorway. This man who commanded rooms of engineers and investors now kneeling on the carpet, whispering comfort to a child. For the first time, she thought maybe the world was finally seeing the Adrian she had always known. Thunder rolled again, softer this time. Ivy's breathing steadied. Adrian carried her back to the guest room, tucking the blanket around her. When he turned off the lamp, her fingers still curled around the pen like a secret promise. Back in his office, he whispered to himself, "They can try to destroy me in court, but she's already winning." Amara nodded, watching the storm break beyond the glass. "Then let them come," she said. "Tomorrow, we show them what brave looks like." The courthouse on Guadalupe Street buzzed like a hive that morning. Press, attorneys, camera flashes bouncing off glass. The air conditioning couldn't quite keep up with the late summer heat outside, and tension radiated through the marble halls like static. Adrian straightened his tie in the reflection of a vending machine. He looked composed, but the circles under his eyes told the truth. Amara stood beside him, tablet in hand, while Detective Ruiz leaned against the wall, flipping through a folder. "She's in good hands," Ruiz said quietly. "CPS brought Ivy in through the side entrance. Talia's with her." Adrian nodded once. "She shouldn't have to see this." "Still," Ruiz added, "she wanted to come. Said she had something to show the judge." Adrian's eyes softened. "She's braver than most adults I know." In courtroom 2B, the crowd murmured as the bailiff called the case. State of Texas versus Kurt Maddox. Hearing for preliminary custody determination and abuse charges. At the plaintiff's table, Adrian sat flanked by Amara and Talia Nguyen. Across from them, Kurt Maddox smirked in a cheap gray suit, flanked by his attorney, Dana Crow, a sharp-eyed woman in a crimson jacket known for dismantling public figures. Serena sat behind him, hands twisting in her lap, eyes fixed on the floor. Judge Monroe, stern and gray-haired, settled into her chair. "Let's proceed." Dana rose first. "Your Honor, we intend to demonstrate that Mr. Cole's actions were not purely altruistic. He's a wealthy CEO under intense public scrutiny who leveraged this situation for publicity. Temporary custody was granted in haste under emotional influence without proper vetting." Amara's pen tapped once, steady rhythm. Adrian's jaw didn't move. Dana continued, pacing. "Mr. Cole has a billion-dollar company to run. He travels internationally. What stability can he offer a 7-year-old child? Furthermore, evidence suggests he allowed her to appear in photographs circulated online, violating CPS confidentiality protocols." Adrian stood. "May I respond?" The judge nodded. He spoke calmly, his voice carrying weight. "Your Honor, I didn't take Ivy home for publicity. I did it because it was 102 degrees that night and she was kneeling on gravel under threat. There wasn't time to wait for red tape." Dana crossed her arms. "A noble speech, but heroics don't equal parenting." Adrian met her gaze squarely. "Neither does cruelty." A low murmur rippled through the courtroom. Talia stepped forward, setting a thick binder on the table. "CPS documents show immediate danger, medical confirmation of heat-induced abrasions, and prior unreported injuries. Under Emergency Statute 247.9, Mr. Cole's overnight care was lawful and necessary." The judge flipped through the file silently. Ruiz was next, called to the stand. He laid out the chain of evidence: doorbell footage, bank transfers, recorded conversations. Then he played the smart speaker audio. The courtroom fell utterly still. Kurt's voice blared from the speaker. "You think being quiet makes you weak? You stay still till I say." The faint sound of a child whimpering, gravel scraping. Serena gasped softly. The judge's expression froze into stone. Ruiz finished. "These were pulled from devices in Mr. Maddox's home. Warranted, time-stamped, verified." Dana tried to recover. "Your Honor, we can't confirm the device wasn't tampered." Ruiz interrupted, firm. "The metadata was cross-checked with service logs and synchronized to the neighbor's doorbell camera. The events line up to the second." Judge Monroe raised a hand. "Enough. Continue, Detective." Ruiz nodded. "Additionally, we have proof of fraudulent transfers from the child's trust to accounts registered under Maddox Shell Holdings." Dana turned to her client, hissing under her breath. "You told me there were no records." Kurt sneered. "They planted it." From the witness bench, Serena finally lifted her head. "No," she whispered. Everyone turned. Talia approached gently. "Mrs. Maddox?" Serena's voice shook. "They didn't plant anything. He made me sign the papers. He said if I didn't, he'd take the baby." Tears spilled silently down her face. "I didn't stop him. I should have." Dana groaned. "Your Honor." "Quiet," the judge ordered. Kurt slammed a fist on the table. "She's lying. You all want my money." Adrian stood slowly, every inch of him calm. "You took from a child who couldn't fight back. That ends today." The judge's gavel cracked once. "Mr. Maddox, another outburst and I'll hold you in contempt." Silence fell again, thick and electric. Judge Monroe turned to Talia. "Until full trial, the child remains in temporary custody with Mr. Cole. All visitation by Mrs. Maddox is to be supervised. Mr. Maddox is remanded pending financial and abuse charges." A quiet sob broke from Serena's seat, half grief, half relief. Outside the courthouse, thunder echoed faintly across the baking sky. Reporters called Adrian's name, cameras flashing, but he didn't stop. He just looked down at Ivy, who waited beside Talia near the car, clutching her sketchbook. "Did they believe me?" she asked. Adrian crouched. "They did. And more importantly, they heard you." She smiled, small but certain. "Then we fixed it." He nodded. "We're getting there." As they drove away, a warm breeze cut through the fading storm. For the first time, the city didn't feel quite so hot. That night, thunder still rumbled faintly over Austin, though the rain had stopped. The city shimmered under scattered streetlights and puddles that steamed in the lingering heat. Inside the penthouse, silence stretched, soft, cautious, the kind that follows chaos. Adrian sat in the hallway outside the guest room, tie gone, sleeves rolled up. The titanium pen lay on the floor beside him, gleaming faintly in the low light. He could hear Ivy's breathing from inside, fast, uneven. Then a sharp cry. He was through the door before he knew it. Ivy sat upright in bed, eyes wide, sweat beading her forehead. Her small fists clutched the blanket tight. "I'll be quiet," she whispered hoarsely. "I'll be quiet, like stone." Adrian crossed the room slowly, kneeling beside her. Hey," he said softly. "You don't have to be quiet anymore." She didn't seem to hear him at first. "If I move, he'll... Adrian's voice dropped lower, grounding. "Look at me, Ivy." Her eyes flicked toward him, confused, trembling. "You're not there," he said gently. "You're here, and here you get to breathe." Her breathing hitched, then broke into sobs. He reached up slowly, letting her see his hand before he touched her shoulder. "And through your nose," he said, matching his breaths to hers. "Out through your mouth, slow." She tried, failed, tried again. Finally her chest loosened, the sobs softened. He picked up the titanium pen from the bedside table, pressed it into her small palm. "Remember what I told you?" She sniffled. Write new code. That's right, Adrian said quietly. You're not broken. You just get to write something new now. She turned the pen over in her hand. What do I write? The first line's the most important, he said. You ready? She nodded faintly. He smiled. You are safe. She whispered the words, almost testing them. I am safe. Say it again. I am safe. And again. By the fifth time, her voice no longer trembled. Adrian leaned back, exhaling softly. That's the new code. Every time it gets loud in your head, that's what you write. Her eyes were half closed now, lashes damp. Does it work for grown-ups too? He smiled. Sometimes it has to. He stayed there until her breathing steadied again, until the tension drained from her small shoulders. Then he sat quietly on the floor, his back against the wall, staring out at the faint reflection of lightning far beyond the city. A knock came from the doorway. Amara, barefoot, holding 2 mugs of tea. Couldn't sleep? He shook his head. Night terror. She handed him a mug, nodding toward the sleeping child. You handled it well. I just remembered what it was like, he murmured, trying to breathe when someone else decides the rules. Amara sat down beside him. You've been carrying that since the first night you found her. He sipped the tea absently. Maybe longer. You don't have to fix the world, Adrian. He looked down at his hands. I know, but I can fix one story at a time. Amara studied him quietly. The city lights reflected in his glasses, the mix of sharp intellect and the quiet ache of someone learning how to care again. You ever think, she said softly, that maybe that's what your AI was trying to teach you? That real safety isn't data, it's people showing up? He smiled faintly. Then maybe I'm finally learning. They sat in silence, the hum of the city below mixing with the steady rhythm of Ivy's breathing. After a while, Amara rose. You should rest. Big day tomorrow? He raised an eyebrow. Court? She smiled. No. Breakfast with a 7-year-old who just rewrote her entire operating system. He chuckled quietly, watching as she left the room. Then he turned back to Ivy, asleep now, the titanium pen still clutched in her hand. Good work, kid, he whispered. You built brave. Outside, the storm clouds drifted east, leaving the city washed and still. The air was warm, but no longer suffocating. And for the first time since that night on Maple Grove, Adrian Cole allowed himself to close his eyes. Morning light spilled into the Travis County Courthouse like gold dust through the blinds. The storm had cleared, but tension still hung in the air. Reporters filled the lobby again, this time quieter, watching rather than shouting. Today was the reckoning. Adrian sat at the plaintiff's table beside Amara and Talia Nguyen. He looked calm, though the lines near his eyes were deeper. Across from him, Kurt Maddox sat in handcuffs, jaw tight, eyes full of fury barely held in check. His lawyer, Dana Crow, whispered urgently, but he wasn't listening. Serena sat several rows behind, pale but upright, her hands folded tightly around a folded handkerchief. Detective Ruiz stepped forward first. Your Honor, today we present the full evidence chain establishing abuse, financial exploitation, and coercive control within the Maddox household. The judge nodded. Proceed. Ruiz began with the neighbor's doorbell footage. The lights dimmed slightly as the video played on a monitor. The glow of a porch light, the sharp shadow of a man pacing, the faint outline of a small figure kneeling in the driveway. The sounds, gravel scraping, a barked order, a child's quiet sob, made the courtroom fall utterly silent. Serena covered her mouth. Dana tried to object. Your Honor, the footage is grainy and lacks sound clarity. Ruiz tapped a key. Timestamp synchronization from the same night as the smart speaker activation. May I? The judge gestured for him to continue. The next clip played, the audio logs from the household assistant. Kurt's voice filled the room. You think being quiet makes you weak? You stay still till I say. You make noise, I'll double your time. A low murmur rippled through the gallery. Even Dana flinched. Ruiz continued evenly. These recordings were obtained via warrant, confirmed by digital forensics. The metadata aligns to the doorbell footage down to the second. Dana stood abruptly. We dispute the chain of custody. Ruiz turned. Then allow me to refresh your memory. He clicked again, bringing up the financial records. Wire transfers from the child's life insurance trust, each authorized electronically under Serena Maddox's ID, routed to Maddox Shell Holdings. He turned toward Serena gently. Mrs. Maddox, you've testified you didn't initiate these? Serena nodded tearfully. He told me to sign. Said if I didn't, I'd lose my baby. Kurt muttered something under his breath. Ruiz ignored it. We traced those funds to accounts in Kurt Maddox's name, used for vehicle purchases, gambling, and payments to third-party contractors, including one, he said, pausing for effect, who attempted to plant evidence in Mr. Cole's office. The judge looked up sharply. You're referring to the prescription bottles? Yes, Your Honor. Surveillance confirmed the suspect's entry using a stolen contractor badge. Security AI logged the breach automatically. Dana turned on her client. You told me that was fake. Kurt slammed his hands on the table. You think I'm letting some rich boy steal my kid? Enough, the judge snapped, gavel cracking once. Silence reclaimed the room. Ruiz exhaled. There's more. We subpoenaed communications from Mr. Maddox's phone. Messages read, plant the bottles. Make him look unstable. He'll lose custody. Kurt sat back, jaw clenched, eyes darting between the judge and the crowd. Ruiz turned off the screen. Your Honor, this man weaponized a child's fear, drained her inheritance, and tried to destroy the only person who intervened. There's no ambiguity here. This is abuse. Physical, emotional, financial. The judge nodded slowly. Thank you, Detective. She turned to Serena. Mrs. Maddox, do you wish to say anything before I deliver my ruling? Serena stood shakily. I don't want him near us again, she said, voice breaking. I was scared for too long. I just want Ivy to be safe. Then, unexpectedly, Ivy stood up from the gallery, clutching her sketchbook. The bailiff started to stop her, but the judge raised a hand. The little girl walked up to the bench, trembling but determined. Your Honor, she said, holding up a drawing. It showed two figures, one tall, one small, standing under a bright yellow sun. The small one held a pen. The tall one wore glasses. Between them, a green band glowed. This is my new home, she said softly. No more gravel. The courtroom went still. The judge looked at her for a long moment before nodding to the bailiff to help her back to her seat. Then she turned to Kurt. Mr. Maddox, I've presided over many cases, but few have shown such cruelty, manipulation, and calculated deceit. This court finds you guilty of child endangerment, coercive control, and financial fraud. Kurt's face drained of color. Custody of Ivy Maddox is hereby granted in full to Mr. Adrian Cole, the judge continued. Mrs. Serena Maddox may pursue reunification under supervised visitation following completion of therapy and parental rehabilitation programs. The gavel came down hard, final, echoing through the room. Serena wept openly. Adrian exhaled, his composure cracking just enough for Amara to see the relief in his eyes. Ivy turned, smiling through tears, her small fingers gripping her green wristband. Outside, the air was thick and warm, but no longer oppressive. For the first time in weeks, the heat felt clean, like something had burned away. As they stepped down the courthouse steps, Adrian knelt beside Ivy. It's over now. She looked up, eyes bright. Then we can go home? He smiled, tired but sure. Yeah, kid. We can finally go home. Thunder rolled somewhere far off, but it wasn't a warning anymore. It was a heartbeat returning to the world. The afternoon sun blazed across downtown Austin, but it felt different now, softer somehow, less like punishment. A warm breeze lifted paper scraps from the courthouse steps as Adrian and Ivy stepped outside. Cameras clicked, voices rose, but he ignored them. He reached for Ivy's hand. "You hungry?" She nodded shyly. "Can we get pancakes?" He smiled. "Pancakes it is." They crossed the plaza, passing reporters calling his name. "Mr. Cole, do you plan to adopt? What about the company backlash?" He didn't stop. The world could wait. Inside a quiet diner 2 blocks away, the air smelled of coffee and maple syrup. Ivy sat by the window, flipping her fork in her hand like it was treasure. When the waitress brought her plate, she whispered, "Thank you," as if unsure she was allowed. Adrian watched her eat, his phone vibrating again and again on the table. Headlines scrolled across the screen. Court awards, CEO, full custody in abuse case. He silenced it. Amara entered a few minutes later, hair loose from the heat, dropping into the booth beside him. "You're officially free," she said quietly. "Not free," he corrected. "Responsible." She smiled. "That's better." They sat in silence for a moment, watching Ivy pour syrup in careful circles. Then Amara said, "Ruiz called. They're transferring Kurt to state custody for sentencing. The fraud case goes federal." Adrian's eyes didn't leave Ivy. "Good." Amara studied him. "You know, you didn't have to take this all the way." He finally looked up. "Yes, I did. Every system, legal, digital, human, missed her. That means they're broken, and broken things bother me." Amara laughed softly. "You've said that before." "Because it's still true." Across the table, Ivy set down her fork and tugged at her green wristband. "Does this mean I stay here now?" Adrian leaned forward. "It means you have a home and a choice. You'll see your mom soon, but on your terms. No more gravel, no more shouting." She nodded solemnly, then smiled a little. "Can I keep the pen?" He pretended to think. "Only if you promise to keep writing." "I will," she said. "I'm going to write a story about robots that fix people." Amara grinned. "That's a good start." After breakfast, they drove back to the Luminark Tower. The building gleamed in the sunlight, its mirrored facade scattering gold reflections over the city. As they entered, employees paused, smiling quietly. Someone had left a small bouquet of sunflowers on his desk with a note. "For the girl who built Brave." Ivy picked one up, twirling it in her hand. "It smells like warm," she said. Adrian chuckled. "That's a good description." Amara leaned against the doorframe. "You know the team's waiting downstairs. They want to hear from you before the afternoon brief." "Tell them to start without me," he said. "I've got something more important." He turned to Ivy. "You ever see how code works?" She shook her head. He led her to the massive screen across his office wall. "This," he said, "is where I teach machines how to learn. But today, you'll teach it something new." He opened a blank file. "Type this," he said, guiding her small hands across the keyboard. She pecked slowly, letter by letter. "If hurt, stop. If scared, tell. If lost, wait. If safe, stay." He smiled, watching her face light up as the words appeared. "That's the best code I've ever seen." "Can it help other kids?" she asked. "It will," he said softly. "I promise." Later that evening, they stood on the balcony as the city lights blinked on. A warm wind swept across the skyline, carrying the scent of rain and hot pavement. Ivy leaned against the glass railing. "It's cooler now." "Yeah," Adrian said, resting a hand on her shoulder. The heat finally broke. She turned to him, eyes curious. "Will you always stay?" He smiled, adjusting his glasses. "That's the plan." Below, Austin buzzed. Cars, sirens, laughter. The rhythm of life returning to balance. For the first time, Adrian felt the city breathe with him. When they went back inside to Epaudur, Ivy left the sunflower on his desk beside the titanium pen. She looked up. "Can I draw here again tomorrow?" "Every day," he said. "You've got all the paper you need." Outside, thunder rumbled faintly again, distant this time, almost like applause. No more gravel, no more silence, just the steady sound of 2 lives learning how to stay. 3 months later, Austin had softened. The air was still warm, but kinder now, the sting gone from its heat. Downtown shimmered under early autumn light, and from the wide glass windows of Bright Room Labs, the non-profit wing Luminark had launched in Ivy's name. Laughter echoed. Inside, children filled the space with motion and color. Robots wheeled across the floor, small drones hovered like curious insects, and walls once bare now bloomed with drawings. Among them, Ivy moved with the quiet confidence of someone who no longer braced for footsteps behind her. She wore her faded green Build Brave wristband, the letters still ghosted, but clear enough. On the workbench before her, a tiny rover paused at a strip of red tape and spoke in a bright, childlike tone. Consent required. The room erupted in laughter. Adrian stood nearby, suit jacket off, sleeves rolled, glasses catching the light. He smiled. Real. Easy. The titanium pen was tucked into his shirt pocket, the same one he'd given Ivy that first night. Amara joined him, tablet in hand. That line she coded herself, she said quietly. Stopped every time it reached the boundary. Smart, Adrian murmured. Knows when to pause, not when to fear. That's your influence. He shook his head. No, that's hers. Ruiz entered. Dressed down for once, coffee in hand. The press wants a quote for the launch article, he said. They're calling it Code Safe now? Amara nodded. AI modules that teach consent, empathy, and boundary recognition. Designed by survivors for survivors. Ruiz raised an eyebrow. And funded by a man who once said machines couldn't feel. Adrian smiled. Turns out people can teach them. He looked across the room. Ivy was showing another child how to attach sensors to a small robot. Her voice was patient, steady. You just have to make sure it listens before it moves, she said. Amara watched her, eyes glinting. She's good with them. She's better than good, Adrian replied. She's rebuilding the code. At the far wall, a new mural stretched across the panels, drawn by the kids during the opening week. On one side, a driveway made of colored dots. On the other, a bright green sun and 2 figures at a workbench. Both wore the same wristband. Adrian stopped before it, his throat tightening. Ivy came up beside him, smudged marker on her fingers. Do you like it? She asked. He smiled. I love it. I made the sun green, she said, because yellow is too normal, and green's what brave feels like. That's perfect, he said softly. She glanced up at him, her blue eyes reflecting the mural's light. Are you going to stay here all day? He chuckled. Probably. Someone has to make sure these robots don't take over the snack table. She giggled, then tugged at his sleeve. Then stay. He looked down at her, at the wristband, the pen tucked into her shirt pocket now, her smile full and certain, and nodded. I'm not going anywhere. Later, as the afternoon light warmed the room, Adrian stood by the window, watching the city breathe beyond the glass. For the first time, he didn't feel like he was fixing something. He was simply part of it. Amara came to stand beside him. You've built more than a lab, she said. You built a family. He smiled, adjusting his glasses. She built it. I just followed the code. In the reflection, Ivy was laughing with the other kids, her hair catching the light. The mural behind her glowed with green and gold. Outside, a breeze moved through the live oaks, rustling softly. The last heat of summer faded at last, leaving behind the quiet hum of life beginning again. Adrian checked his watch, not out of habit, but grounding, a man no longer defined by precision, but by presence. He turned away from the window and walked back toward the laughter, because sometimes the smartest thing in the world wasn't building something new, it was learning to stay.